Day, March 18th, and we are solving radical inequalities. I sent a message to you guys yesterday, kind of letting you know that I'm trying to keep up with you guys doing or not doing anything. And yes, I will be letting your parents know. So hopefully you're trying to keep up as much as you can. Try to stay up to date. We have a long ways to go in this semester, and you don't want to get behind. So here are the steps to solving inequalities. Probably would be a good time to stop the video and copy this down into your notebook. Here's a little bit more about the answer. Our answers are going to be written in interval notation. So at some point we'll be using brackets and or parentheses. So we're going to want this information as well. So this would be a good time to probably pause the video and copy this down as well. Okay, so let's talk about brackets and parentheses. So based on the previous slide, critical points talks about critical points. So a critical point is what the answer is going to be bordered by. So the critical points are basically boundaries as to where the answer lies. So the answer is either going to be to the left of the critical point or to the right of the critical point. It just kind of depends on what the inequality is telling us in the problem. So we got to find two critical points. So the first critical point comes from putting 0 as the radical and then solving that. So both of these, well, let's just get into the first one. So the first one looks like this. So we're going to look at these 6 problems, these first 6 problems that are on page 8, and we're going to imagine that, let's use red, that this right here is just a big 0. Big old 0 right here. Okay. Now, question is 0 less than or equal to 8? So let me put that equal sign in there for you. Equal. Well, okay. So we'll try that again. Too many arrows. Been doing too many things today. So equal sign. So is it? Is 0 less than or equal to 8? Well, yes, it is. Okay. So yes. Okay. And so what that yes is telling us is that we're going to get a bracket. Oops. Okay. So our first critical point, we'll talk about getting the critical point in a few minutes, is we get a bracket. The second critical point, okay, comes from the inequality. Is it an equal to or not an equal to? Well, let's see. Let's use the highlighter. Is this an equal to? Well, yes, it is. Okay, so do we have an equal to? And, well, yes, we do. We get another yes. So we get another bracket. So for this problem, number 1, both critical points would be brackets. So I'm just going to slide this stuff over a little bit so we can get some more answers on here. Okay, so this is just critical points. Okay, what does the critical point get a bracket or not? So let's take a look at this one. Move this 0, copy it. This is a big 0. Okay, so right here, is 0 greater than 4? That's the question. Is 0 greater than 4? Well, I'd say no. Most of you guys should say no too. One or two of you may not know. Well, I am not going to get an entire word parentheses on here, okay? So So we're going to do this. Okay, so no equals a parentheses. So our first critical point that we find is going to have a parentheses that's associated with it. What about the second one? So the second critical point comes from the inequality. Is this equal to? That's the question. Okay, so I'll copy this. Let's see. Is this an equal to? Well, no, it's not. It's not as well. So, no, that gets a parentheses also. So this is a problem where both critical points get parentheses. All right, so I'm going to come down here. I'm going to do that again. Talk about just the parentheses and brackets for these problems. That's not what I wanted. I wanted this. Okay, put a 0 right here. Is 0 less than 5? I think that's a yes. I think 0 is less than 5. So yes, that equals bracket. Okay, now is this an equal to problem? Is this an equal to problem? No, it is not. So that becomes, come on, copy and paste. That becomes a parentheses, okay, because the answer was no. Equal to? There was no equal to in this problem, so therefore it gets a parentheses. All right. Now let's go back and talk about that one more time. The rules for brackets and parentheses. The first critical point, and you don't know what your critical points are yet. But it comes from putting a big red 0 as the radical. So that's what this is. That's a big 0 right there. It's a big 0. So basically we're ignoring everything that's where that radical was. So is 0 less than or equal to 8? Why, yes, it is. Is 0 greater than 4? No, it's not. Is 0 less than 5? Yes, it is. And so every time you say yes, it's a bracket. No, it's a parentheses. Yes, it's a bracket. Every time you say yes, it's a bracket. Every time you say no, it's a parentheses. So, second critical point comes from the inequality. Is it an equal to? Okay, well, let's check that out. I have them highlighted. Is that an equal to? Yes, it is. So that's a bracket. Is this an equal to? No, it's not. So that's a parentheses. Is this an equal to? No, it's not. So that's a parentheses. So that's how we're going to look at our brackets and parentheses. Now, let's go and look at how do we actually get our critical points. The first critical point, okay, we take the radical and we set it equal to 0. This is why we put a big red 0 on top of that radical, okay? This is going to be our first critical point. We're going to solve that. All right, so let's go back to this first problem, and I have it set up right here with directions. Here's the directions, okay? So we're going to set the radical equal to 0. The radical is 5z plus 4. That gets equal to 0 right here. First direction. Set the radical equal to 0. That's what we've got right there. And we're going to solve that. It's going to be a quick solve. Z equals -4/5. That's our first critical point. Okay, so up here, we have our first critical point, -4/5. Okay, our first critical point over here, we talked about our first critical points. We decided that that number that we just got was going to have a bracket associated with it. Okay, the first critical point. So I'm going to put a green B right here for bracket. Okay, so I'm going to list my critical points up here in the top right-hand corner so we know what they are. Okay, let's lift the problem up a little bit. Now, step two. we're going to solve the equation as usual. So yesterday's homework, you were solving square root equations. So we're going to solve this equation right here as normal. I'll put it right here. All right, so hopefully you did last night's homework, and you'll know to be able to solve this, we have to square both sides. Okay, so we'll have 5z plus 4 equals, and yes, we're changing the inequality to an equal sign because we're just trying to come up with another critical point, 64. Keep solving. Subtract 4. I'm going to change that. Minus 4, both sides. Five z is going to equal 60. Keep solving. Divide by 5. And we get z equals 12. So that's our second critical point. All right, so we go back, previous page. Our second critical point is also a bracket. So our first one was a bracket, our second one is a bracket. And if you're not keeping up with that, we did that right here. First critical point we found was negative 5/4. Second critical point we found was 12. So here we are. We have our two critical points. And this is also going to get a bracket. Okay, we have our two critical points. Step 3, put the critical points on a number line. I've already got a number line set up. This does not have to be very detailed number line. You just have to put your critical points in some type of chronological order. They don't have to be specific. So you can say, hey, that's going to be negative 4/5. This is negative 4/5. I'm going to adjust the screen a little bit. And our second critical point, 12. All right, so we put them on a number line. Okay, now I'm going to give you guys a little heads up. Less than, okay? All right, here, this is a tip. Less than, okay? It's going to be in the middle. So in other words, this is going to be shaded in the middle between the two critical points. Here we go. Okay, if it's a greater problem, it's going to be on the outside of the two critical points. Let's pull that. Greater than. It's going to be on the outside. Okay. So speed up the learning process here for you. Okay. So this right here, good stuff. It's gold. We'll even put it in gold. Okay. So now we get to shade, essentially. Okay. So the answer, we're going to put this, is going to be in the middle of the two critical points. That's what the middle means right here. And now we're ready to write our answer in interval notation. So the answer starts with negative 4/5, comma. It ends at 12. And well, what goes on the outside of them? Well, each one of those has a bracket. So brackets will look like this. Each side gets a bracket. Whoop, that's not the wrong bracket. Okay. So that is our final answer. Okay, that's problem number one. Now, I'll give you a heads up. These problems that I'm doing on page 8, that is eventually going to be your homework. Right here, problems page 8 and 9, numbers 1 through 16. So if you want to print it out and start copying down what I'm doing, that's great. If you don't, you can just write it down on a separate sheet of paper, deal with it later. So here's problem number 1. All right, so I'm going to copy this, put this great information on this side, this page, so we can move on to this problem. Okay, this is problem number 2. We've already discussed the critical points. We'll talk about them again in a minute. Let me separate. Okay. All right. First critical point. Set the radical equal to 0. That would be 6x minus 5 equals 0. That is 6x minus 5, 6x minus 5. It's what's inside the radical. Set the radical equal to 0. That's the first step. All right, now we get to solve that. So add 5 divided by 6, x equals 5 over 6. Now, can anybody tell me if that was supposed to be a bracket or parentheses? Because we've discussed this. You're supposed to take big fat red 0 and ask yourself, is 0 greater than 4? Hopefully, all of you say no. And so that equals parentheses. Okay, so I'm going to come up here. I'm going to write down 5 over 6. And above it, I'm going to put a P for parentheses. And this is just me putting it in several places so that you can see over and over and over again what I'm doing. Okay. All right. Second step, solve the equation as usual. So like you normally would, as if this was Tuesday and you were just solving an equation. All right, so we square both sides. That's how you get rid of a square root. Okay, that leaves us with 6x minus 5 equals 4 squared, 16. Keep solving the equation. Plus 5 plus 5. Yeah, it doesn't work out perfect. Neither is this school year, so we just do the best we can. Equals 21. Okay. Divide by 6. And x will equal, let's see, 21 divided by 6. It doesn't simplify, but sorry, it doesn't go into it evenly, but we can simplify it. 21 divided by 6 is going to be 7/2. 7 over 2. All right, so that was our second critical point, 7 over 2. All right, so now, second critical point, is it a bracket or a parentheses? Well, some of y'all were paying attention earlier. Some of y'all probably weren't. So it comes from the inequality. Is this, whoops, is that an equal? I don't think that's an equal. So since it's not an equal, it gets a parentheses also. So both of ours get a parentheses. So we put them on a number line, making sure that we understand which one's a bigger number, a smaller number. 5, 6. pen. Get my pen. This is going to be 5 over 6. This is going to be 7 over 2. And the shading of it, this is a greater than problem. It's greater than. It's greater than. That means it's going to be outside of the 2 critical points. It's going to be out here. And then we write our answer in interval notation. Okay, so where does this begin? It begins at negative infinity, which is going to be really fun to write. So this one, okay, this interval, this first interval, starts at, come on, pen, where are you? Negative, okay, infinity, not too shabby. 5, 6. Okay, talk to me about parentheses and brackets. A infinity always gets a parentheses. Up top, way up there, it says that 5, 6 gets a parentheses also. Second part of the answer is over here. 7 halves. And where does that go? Where is this one going? That's going to infinity. So there's infinity. 7 halves, if you look up at the top, is also a parentheses. Infinity always gets a parentheses. So there's our answer. Our answer is right here. All of this, both of these intervals becomes our answer. All right, so I'm going to skip ahead and do number 13. It's a little bit more to 13 than usual. This is probably the hardest one you guys have. Okay. First critical point. Take 0, put it in place of the radical. Okay. So that leaves us with this. Negative 2 is greater than or equal to 6. I think you all should say no to that. Okay. So that's a parentheses. All right. So that's our first piece of information that we figured out. Okay. That we have a no. So that's the parentheses. Okay. Now we take the 9 minus 5x and we set it equal to 0. And that's going to give us that first critical point. So let's see. We'll add 9. Negative 5x equals 9. 9. Divide x equals negative 9/5. Okay, so this is the parentheses for this critical point. In case you want it, negative 9/5, and that is going to be a parentheses. Okay, second critical point, solve the equation. Almost done, guys. Last problem. All right, solve. So we got to get rid of this 2 first. So we will add 2. Add 2. So that's 9 minus 5x. It's going to be a greater than 8. I'll fix this up a little bit. Still have a radical. This is equal to. All right, continue solving. Square both sides. Nine minus 5x equals 64. 8 squared, 64. Continue solving. Subtract the 9. This is going to work out a little nicer than the previous problem. Negative 5x equals 55. And hopefully you guys know x is going to be negative 11. So that's our second critical point. So here, negative 11. That didn't work out. Here we go. Parentheses on this 9/5. So what about this negative 11? Well, negative 11 is going to get an equal to. So what's that mean? That means bracket. So we put our negative 11 in our answer. We'll make sure that it gets a bracket. Now, these numbers, what I keep saying about this number line, you got to make sure you put them in order. So, which one's smaller? That one goes on the left. Well, that will be negative 11. And over here is negative 9/5. Because negative 11 is a smaller number than negative 9/5. Now, here comes something really tricky in this problem. At some point, when we divided by this negative, this inequality flipped signs on us, making it actually a greater than or equal to sign. Sorry, a less than or equal to sign. Okay, so we now have a less than or equal to sign. So what does less than mean? I'll put that over here. That. Boom. Less than tells us you guys better be shading this in the middle. So this gets shaded right there. So let's write an answer. Negative 11, negative 9/5. Okay, now pay attention to the brackets and parentheses. Parentheses on the 9/5 and the bracket for negative 11. Boom. There you go. I expect some questions. Okay, there's no problems on Delta Math for this topic. So we are working in our packet on pages 8 and 9. Okay, they're on the blog. Feel free to download them, or you can just write them on a separate sheet of paper. You don't have to print anything. I did problems 1, 2, and 13 for you. These answers are also posted on the blog for you to check. And feel free to take pictures and send them to me. And I'll be more than happy to get back to you. You guys have a great day. Look forward to talking to you. See you.